Hello, Church House. This is Daniel Hornsby tuning in tonight just to share another great testimony with you tonight and share some words of wisdom and knowledge. And just like I like to tell you that, they got the 12 Steps program, which really helps with people if you get an addiction, and if you need help. And in the 12-step program, the last step is God, submitting yourself to God and realizing you can't do nothing without God, and only with God can you do anything to get sober, And God will intervene, Pray for the people that's sick and that's in addiction and stuff, because God will intervene. And when you think there ain't no hope for people that's in addiction, there's always hope, because Christ is always with us, and all things are possible through Jesus. And I just like to share this testimony today about a man that I met, and he's wanted to share his testimony on here about how he got sober. He was dealing with drug use, and he was using intravenous needle use. And one day he said he was sitting there, and he said he was getting ready to do a shot of drugs, and he said, next thing you know, he said the needle got slapped out of his hand. And he said there was nobody in there with him. He said it got slapped out of his hand. He said it fell on the floor, and he said he thought he just picked it back up, and he thought it was just weird, and he's like, oh, well, whatever. And he thought he was going to use the drug again. He said he was getting ready to do a shot of drugs again. And as soon as he started to go to do that drug again, something knocked it out of his hand. And he said, man, I just picked it up that third time. He said, I just figured I'd pick it up again. And he said, I tried to use it again. And he said, as soon as he tried to use that drug again, he said, something knocked it out of his hand again. And that third time it knocked it out of his hand, he said, I knew it was God. He said, I knew it was God intervening. And he said, from that day on, he said, he never did touch it again. And that's how he got sober, and that's how God intervenes right on time, and that's why we should pray for the sick. And and we don't really have to go through all the other 12 steps. It's a part of the 12 steps, and the main step that you need is just to seek Jesus, Seek Jesus first, and all things are possible, and don't give up on people who's in addiction, because through Christ all things are possible. And that's the reason I wanted to share his testimony on here, and just say, because like me and this guy, we're good friends now, and I just met him not long ago, and he's filled with the Spirit, and he's filled with joy, and God's changed his life, and he just got his license back. He went 6 years without his license because the drugs took his license from him, using drugs and while driving, and driving under the influence. And God's been good to him, and now he's been sober, and he's got his license back, and he's got his mind focused on Jesus. And all them chains just break off when you start seeking the Lord, and all things are possible. So stay strong and